if you're just out and about and you're out in a normal environment, maybe at your shop, maybe or wherever, if you just have a simple sneeze, everybody starts looking at you because they're worried that you may have it. So that's also becoming an issue. People are like, take it too far that you may have a regular cold that we all suffer from on a regular basis.
All right, so you're wearing a mask, all right, and if it's brand new, if it's an N95 mask, it's going to prevent 95% of pathogens going inside and out, right? But you're breathing in, you're breathing in your own, things you're breathing out, and it could be bad stuff. So you could be infecting yourself if you don't disinfect the mask or change it. You could be causing more respiratory problems with the mask if it's not sanitized, ironically, and you're not getting enough oxygen in, and you're not making nitric oxide if you're not a nose breather. So people have to be taught, if you're going to wear it, to use it wisely. Don't have it on all day. But again, like I said, no news, no virus. It's going to be business as usual.
Oh, well, it's good.
What do you think of, sorry, last question, what do you think about this whole concept of social distancing? Because like I said, that's going to be the big thing here in the States. Everybody wants to stay 6 feet apart from each other. I am actually of the belief that we as humans are social beings. So that's hard to do on a regular basis. I mean, I think we've done a good job of that, staying away, but we regret it. We kind of get frustrated with it. But we as humans like to get out and socialize. I mean, I've got friends that would love to play a pickup game of basketball, or I was actually, the lady that drops off my produce box, she was just telling me that she's trying to figure out how her kids are going to play soccer. They can't play soccer right now because of the physical distancing rules.
It's crazy. You're not going to live a risk-free life. You could just as easily be infected by the influenza virus, right? If you're shaking hands, but that's the risk. It's not going to kill you. A certain percentage will die, but they're 80 or 90. They got comorbidities. They got diabetes, heart disease, or cancer. I hate to be crass, but they're going to go anyway soon. But it doesn't mean that the rest of Americans or wherever you're at has to stay home if you're young and healthy. The bottom line, if you have a strong immune system, that's the best protection.
Yes,
but your immune system is in your cave all day. You're going to get rickets. It's a bone disease the Neanderthals had because they didn't get vitamin D from the sun.
Riddhi, you're smiling. Where are you from, Riddhi?
Hi, I'm from Delhi, India.
Delhi, okay. And what do you do?
I currently lead an initiative called COVIDIndiaTaskForce.org, and this works pan India to protect our doctors, frontline healthcare workers, police folks, in all kinds of ways, with PPEs, with medical equipment, and also supports our government war rooms. We currently support 7+ states in India with respect to at least identifying and helping them connect with 150+ solutions which are helping the government fight COVID. And these solutions are in every particular category, from tele-ICU to various solutions, kind of various inventions. I think every single invention, the sheer diversity of inventions I've seen in the last 4 weeks as well. In fact, our next demo day is tomorrow, and every week Thursday, 8:30 p.m. IST, we have a demo day. We present 30+ solutions, tracks ranging from logistics to PPEs to manufacturer inventions to UV disinfection, robotics, drones, IoT, contact tracing, help desk, it's been quite interesting to see.
Hey, Rita, this is Mark again. Dr. Yo was talking about the fact of the media outlets and everything and how they've been covering it. I'm just curious, India been giving it as strong a coverage, and does that impact the way that y'all are treating it? Because I've actually heard good reports. I think Nick even mentioned that India is not tracking as many cases as we are here in the States. Like I said, I'm here in Durham, North Carolina.
If that was for me, I only caught every third word. I'm really sorry.
Yeah, you're breaking up, Mark.
Yes.
Maybe that's a little bit better. Hope that's a little bit better. But what I was saying is there's much media coverage in India as there has been in the United States. Because like I said, here in the United States, as Dr. Yo was just talking about, every time you turn it on, it's in the news. So I'm asking, are y'all getting that same kind of coverage, and is that impacting the way that y'all are treating what's going on?
That's a great question. I know Ankit is also from Delhi, and he can kind of add to that as well. My sense is, of course, there is media coverage because wherever we have a free press, and the US and India have that in common for sure. That becomes an independent entity. And I do believe, however, that at least from what I have seen, I've seen extreme positives come out of the media coverage as well. Of course, there are aspects where sometimes because of media coverage certain aspect ratios of probabilities are skewed in the minds of watchers, so they might think that everyone will die. They might think the probabilities are slightly skewed in terms of what the negative or worst case situations could be. But that said, I've also seen a lot of media cases and stories on the positive, on people who've kind of done the right thing, on patients who were model patients, or on aspects like let's not stigmatize those who cough in grocery stores. I think I've also seen a lot of journalists work overtime as volunteers to be able to surface on the ground stories. Stories where in some sense bottoms up data collection is very important, because in a country as vast as India and as diverse as India, where such a rapid response is happening top down, but at the same time what's happening in one particular village in one state versus another tier 3 city in another state, are the guidelines being able to be correctly enforced, or is there unintentional police brutality on the ground, right? Is there unintentional inefficiencies on the ground? Is there unintentional hunger, malnutrition, or sort of like abuse of power happening on the ground? I know one case, a particular city had decided that everybody entering that city would be bathed in bleach forcibly. So there are lots and lots of misconceptions. Exactly, right. And because education, I think, as Mark, you and Dr. Philip said, education is what's important. And that's also what's lacking, because at a mass level, if anything, currently there's a bunch of very amazing startups working on, exactly, so working on an Apna Desh Apna Mask campaign, which roughly in English translates to my country, my mask. But they are using media to be able to educate as many people as possible. So that way, I would say, as an independent entity, of course, everything has both sides it can go on. But till the day the positive helps.
Yeah, and I was wondering
Yeah.
about that because, like I said, around here in the United States, we get a lot of people. Nick was just actually making a reference to our president who thought that everybody should swallow cleaners and things of that nature. That was his solution. That was what everybody should do. Everybody kind of laughed at him. But then again, a lot of y'all around the world laugh at him for a lot of reasons and a lot of different things. But that's neither here nor there. But I am wondering, do we sometimes get too caught up with the whole concept of the cleanliness aspect? Because I do know that some people are concerned about, yeah, they don't mind going to the bathroom and washing your hands to do that anyway, just in general. But then they're seeing like folks that are maybe become a little bit obsessive compulsive, and they're feeling like they need to clean off every surface, not just the surfaces that are high surfaces like the computer, your doorknob, the ATM machine. But I know some people around here that might be trying to do, spray down the entire house once or twice a week, and I just wonder if that might be taking it a little bit too far.
Yeah, if you're too, people in the U.S., there's a lot of people are getting toxic. They're getting poisoned by too much bleach. Too much, and they're inhaling it, right? And so yeah, there is a point where you're too sterile. I mean, if you wash your hands too much, the natural microbiome, the good bacteria, if you wash that out, you have no innate natural immunity. So 80% of your immune system is actually in your intestines. Actually, it's your whole mucosa, starting with the mouth, the throat, pharynx, stomach, GI tract, all the way down to your bowels, is all your mucosa. And if you don't have a strong, healthy microbiome, then yeah, you're going to be susceptible to get an infection. So the best way is to keep your microbiome healthy. 80% of your immune system's in your mucosa, the gut, everything. So, but you don't hear about this. You just hear about, oh, just take this drug, take remdesivir. It wasn't even invented for this coronavirus. It's for another virus, or hydrochloroquine, which is for malaria, not this. And now they want to come up with a vaccine without testing. They just want to rapidly approve it without safety studies. How does India feel about vaccinating the whole population?
1.3 billion people. What are
What
we
do they
going to
feel
do?
about that?
Riddhi, well, Riddhi, you seem very happy. So the thing is, I guess you don't have it. You have a beautiful smile. You're all happy. People are dying all over, but you're happy.
Well,
So
Riddhi, is that something you guys research
Um,
too? The corona
Yeah,
vaccine?
sorry. So it's very interesting Mark said that because I was smiling considering suddenly I'm in on this platform a spokesperson for a billion people, which is never going to happen, right? I think I can't comment for what India feels about it, but do we have a shortage of testing? Yes. Are we trying to figure out this testing supply chain? Yes. Are we also trying to figure out, from what I understand, and I'm not a medical expert, I'm just an entrepreneur who is currently kind of trying and making things happen. But from what the experts teach me, there are reagent based tests, RT-PCR tests, and then there are aspects in the testing supply chain which do become the constraint factors. And I know that anybody who supplies those components of it, all the supply is being diverted towards the US. In fact, even from China and from other countries. So I think that has led to a bunch of innovation domestically with respect to whether it's non-reagent based RT-PCR tests, whether it's respect to again, I am seeing a bunch of innovation come up in testing. Not a medical expert and hence unable to comment on it specifically. But on a domestic perspective as well, because a vaccine, I think everyone understands it's fairly far away. And in fact, our government, from whatever I understand of ICMR, has taken a stance that they want to be over careful. To give an
Good.
example, private universities, unlike in the US, which have gotten CABL exemption, if I'm not mistaken, they haven't gotten the equivalent NABL exemption in India. And so, because they are BSL2 certified, but they're not at a certification level which can be conducting COVID-related, clinical trials, etc. So there are a couple distinctions, and every single time, of course, the private sector is pushing for it. I have heard folks in the government be able to at least say that they are trying to be very careful with respect to the certification and testing. Of course, that is a double-edged sword as well, because I'll also have that with respect to, for example, every single time a manufacturer needs to be, let's say, L1 or now L2 certified to be able to deliver some of these things to hospitals or to governments to be able to protect doctors. What happens is ultimately adding the burden of certifications doesn't always guarantee what the certifications intend, which is quality control. But what it does do is it also constrains supply immediately. It also kind of leads to, a block or a very, very long virtual line, if you may. And given the fact that there is a national lockdown, it becomes much harder, not easier, to be able to either get yourself certified or to be able to. It's not like we have perfect technological systems, right? So we did always have a bit of a bureaucracy, and to kind of overnight be able to change that is not possible. Which means we have seen the downside of kind of theoretically being very protective, but having additional certifications as well. Again, I think it's important to take the spirit, not the letter of the intent. If the spirit is, let's try and be careful and thoughtful, and let's try to kind of err on the side of protecting, people, or err on the side of quality control. I do think the solution can be separated from the problem. If the problem is quality control, I believe a lot of innovators can come up with amazing solutions for quality control. Let's say blockchain based end-to-end kind of tracking of the source or the delivery or kind of rating systems, etc. But some basic solutions, like let's just have the manufacturers go through yet another level of certification and then cause more bureaucracy, and then still not, it's not like people can't commit fraud even with those additional theoretical checks in place. So that's my quick comments on both the positive and negative sides of some of the things I've seen over here.
Rita and Dan, can we turn down so y'all can hear me a little bit better? And this is for both of y'all, and maybe the gentleman from Malaysia as well, because I'm not that familiar with that country. But one of the things that is an issue here is that people are concerned about is that as the societies reopen and places reopen, that will highlight some of the disparities that already exist. We're seeing that here with some of the racial divides and some of the things that are happening that way. And I do know for a fact that India is a caste system. And don't get me wrong, America is a class system. So it's very much similar in that sense. I mean, you don't want to understand that, but classism is just as, it has its problems, just like the caste system may have its issues. But I was just wondering, is there some concerns among the different castes that this could highlight some of the problems that were already there already existing and cause those to even be more pronounced? Because I know that that's some of what we're seeing here with some of the groups that are doing protests. A lot of these are, I hate to put it, but they're bluntly white groups that are at the head of these kind of groups here in America that are trying to open up the economy because they feel that it's impacting their businesses. So I was just wondering, how is that caste system being impacted by by what's going on in the world? Because like I said, it is definitely impacting us all, and it doesn't matter whether you're rich, poor, Hindu, Muslim, Christian, or whatever, it's impacting the entire world. But I'm afraid that after things wind down, that we'll see more of the classism and other things come into the forefront. So I was just wondering, either one of you, Ankit and Rita, and if you want to jump in, Raina, or even Willie, I was just wondering what y'all's thoughts are. Because I know that even there in Australia, I don't know that much about the world, but I do study a little bit about it, and I do know that there's the Aborigine people that are there in Australia, as well as other parts of the Australian classes that exist. But I do know, I mean, we first learned about the Aborigines with that famous track runner way back when.
Yes,
Riddhi,
yes.
want to comment?
I just want to know one thing.
Yeah,
Even
perhaps after Rana.
yes, yes. Basically, I just want to know from Riddhi, even Ankit, because Riddhi, especially you are working with frontliner, right? India is a very big country, huge amount of peoples. So the frontliner, especially doctor, nurses, police, and a huge amount of group of people. What's the situation of their like how they protect themselves, and how government actually support them, or organization like you or NGO, like how they support them? What's the real scenario, real situation? Because maybe we get different information from government. You are in local arena, so most important, the frontliner, like how actually even psychologically there are a lot of issues, how they protect themselves and how they positive and how they fight these kind of things, because India is a big country, billions of people, so huge amount of these kind of people, like how the I just want to know about the real situation.
Makes sense. So I'll take them one at a time. I'll address Mark's question first and then Rana's. Mark, I think you asked a beautiful question because just last week we were, discussing internally within the team. This is certainly, I think both things are happening. At one level, it is a leveler that everyone's getting affected. And in fact, because the future of work is here, our ways of working, living have fundamentally changed. And while some industries have collapsed overnight, other industries have sprung up overnight. And those are great levelers. So while we are seeing that, from an income inequality perspective, and I would stick to economic first before I go into class and religion and race, because that's a bit more tricky. From an economic perspective as well, yes, I do believe this is largening the economic disparity gap, not kind of bringing it closer, because those who, especially in a country as diverse as India, which also has a federal structure, which has so many components and so many moving parts to it, when a macro situation like a lockdown happens, and then the actual execution on the ground is so different and so diverse, and the actual stakeholders in every single local area, local district are diverse, and it's already a relationship based culture, which means even historically, relationships over logic, right? Or relationships over efficiency and automation. Again, bureaucracy over kind of a technological platform. So, of course, while we have moved technological platforms, but because of those relationship, just being a part of the cultural aspect of Eastern countries in general, what you are seeing is people who have the relationships with respect to various influential people are able to kind of get their work done faster, are able to get their problems solved faster. I think while the problems are being faced by everybody, right, because there is no easy way to get them solved, what's happening is it's very inefficient, and everyone's working overtime, but everything is happening through calls and through sources and through who knows who. And obviously, when you end up in a who knows who situation, it's going to be extremely unequal. And that's what we're seeing play out. I think it's extremely terrifying, almost, the experience which the economically disadvantaged classes are facing. This wasn't even necessarily a problem that began within them because they don't travel as much or inter-country, but they are facing the brunt of it without having access to solutions, without having access to food these days. They also live in the most confined spaces, for example. So while, we have the privilege of social isolation, some of these, and by the way, in India, we live with our families. So imagine now that we're not allowed to kind of go out, it's affecting, even from a mental health or physical health perspective, those of us who are economically disadvantaged, who live in very, very, very tight quarters with very large families. In fact, again, even when someone is tested positive for COVID, they say that use separate bathrooms, use separate restrooms, because it does carry over in your stool and in your, feces. And again, we have the privilege in our houses of using separate restrooms, but there are so many, there's a bottom 30% of India which doesn't have that privilege. So, for example, now again, even because India has more help, there is a traditional culture of help, right? That also means that all of those communities, what we would call, we need to save our saviors, which is our frontline workers, our doctors, our police folks, or anybody on the front lines. But we also need to serve our servers. So every sanitation worker, every kind of worker who is in a service, in a serving role, and is extremely economically disadvantaged, they're kind of not even being able to get food these days often. And so while the good news, of course, or at least the silver lining, if not good news, is that there are a bunch of NGOs who are tackling various problems like food, like cooking and sort of serving. Now again, given the fact that social distancing is important, what we've seen is a lot of innovation on drones and robotics and IoT. So we've seen drone delivery of food to various slums. We've seen drones be able to do temperature control of areas without people. We've seen so much innovation. And so I do believe if something is being innovated in India, in environments like ours, it can kind of be used anywhere in the world. We're seeing a lot of CCTV camera innovations, because for a country like ours, of our population, now that the lockdowns are being eased, and obviously while the government says we need to wear masks before stepping out, compliance is a different issue. But we're seeing so much innovation from a video analytics software perspective in terms of compliance for mask wearing, etc. We're also seeing an unprecedented adoption from a progressive perspective within governments at every state, district, local, cluster, national level of technology. So we are seeing a very unprecedented kind of support for the government, support for our doctors, support for our healthcare workers. We've seen at least Indian citizens rally up in a way which I haven't seen personally in other countries to the same extent. We've seen the entire startup community come together. We've seen every single inventor come together. We've seen the entire VC community in India come together and give zero equity grants to every single COVID innovation in India. We've seen the governments come together and share best practices. So, we've seen, every single funder, donor, private capacity, public capacity, corporate CSR. We've seen homegrown innovations. So whatever the needs are, whether it's something complicated on the medical technology perspective, whether it's a low-cost ventilator, whether it's a tele-ICU, which can 20x or 50x the impact of a traditional ICU intensivist, whether it's a low-cost bed, whether it's a cardboard DIY hospital equipment, from an invention perspective, I am the silver lining is it's heartwarming. What we've seen, we've also seen people come together and collaborate in the last 2 months and do more work than the last 5 years combined. So we've seen
Wow.
competing companies collaborate. We've seen people go above and beyond. We've seen more connects happen. We've personally had some cohort and portfolio companies be live in 7 states, whereas in a non-COVID environment, they would take 7 years or more or 70 to go live with 7 states. So we have seen that as well. And for what it's worth, that's been heartwarming.
Yeah, and that's actually interesting you said that, and I know you got to get to Raina's question as well, but yeah, because I'm just thinking about how it used to be here in the United States. We had that same kind of collective environment with the different generations and things of that nature. Then we became more separate. Still close to my mom and dad, but I know a lot of us are not as close to their parents, aren't as close to their grandparents. Whereas, like you said, and I've got other friends live in India and live around India. Then a lot of times y'all have got 3 or 4 generations living together, whereas we don't necessarily have that, and that's an advantage that I think that y'all do have compared to us and everything. One of the other things, and it's just a follow-up question, I'm going to get to Dana's question, is I'm also wondering about the way that we're working jobs. You mentioned that even what y'all have going on, because it seems to me that because of the COVID, because of the fact that we're staying at home and what's going on with the schools, that a lot of times we're actually working maybe 80% of the time and not getting out, but 15 or 20% of the time. Whereas generally, and yes, we've always had this kind of work, maybe overwork kind of environment here in the United States and around the world, I would argue. But I'm thinking it might even be more so because everything's in the house. So it seems like we're either eating too much or working too much because of the fact that those are the things that are going on in our lives and everything. And we're trying to find ways to stay engaged. And a lot of our work and our schooling is taking place here in the environment. So both of y'all are relatively young. I'm in my late 50s, but I was just wondering, how are you feeling about that whole kind of work concept and the fact that you're working from your home? So a lot of that means that you're probably working more than you would have before.
Yes. In fact, what we've seen is I don't think India even had the kind of culture of work from home that the US does. I have worked in the US for a bunch of years. I was there for 7 years in California and on the West Coast. And, when I came back, of course, I think from a work ethic perspective, if I'm allowed to be politically incorrect for a second, we didn't quite have the same work ethic. Ankit is smiling, that I was used to from my time in the US. What I have seen, however, again, I'm going to focus on the silver lining, that companies, because they had to figure out work from home, people have become more productive. And I'm going to take that as a win because I have to run companies. So I think, yes, that balance has gone away. But I also think because this has gone on for 2 months, if it was only for 15 days, it would have got driven us crazy. I think the ironic nature of the fact that it's gone on for this long also means people have had to figure out, necessity is the mother of invention. People have had to figure out how to separate within their home a workspace or their bed space. I personally used to always work from my bed when I was at home, and now I can't stand that room, so I have to be in a separate space to be able to work. People have had to figure out and take mental health very seriously. People have had to kind of destigmatize the fact that yes, we are going crazy, yes, we do need to talk to each other, and yes, we do need to be able to call a therapist helpline and just vent or scream into a pillow, and yes, that's okay. So I think I've seen companies go above and beyond as well to be able to offer mental health resources to their employees, and to be able to be more, I think I've also seen companies become more tech friendly. What we've also seen is, the startup ecosystem, I think in any country, is a certain percentage. So in India, that might be, I'm throwing out ballpark random numbers, 5 or 10%. But then usually innovation, let's say example, a digital signature, right? Usually innovation gets has a bit of a curve, and it stays limited to the startup ecosystem, which is more progressive. This has become a leveling factor where so many companies have been able to actually transcend, like when people of my parents' generation and my grandparents start using Zoom, we know everyone is becoming technologically friendly, right? And that's just one example. When industries like real estate start ending up on Zoom, when so many traditional industries start looking for digital signatures, and so on and so forth. So I think that way, we've seen a bunch of progress happen.
Thank you.
Well said, Riddhi. I just wanted to add a few points that during this pandemic, if you see across the world, countries with limited resources, they are doing good. We can talk about Hong Kong, you can talk about Malaysia, you can talk about Singapore, you can talk about Macau. So that means company with limited resources and country with limited resources, they are doing good because they know that they have this much resources and they have to manage within the same frame of mind. And that is also happen in India. India might be a big country, but we always have limited resources, and we know that how to manage our work in that limited resources and within the time of frame, because we know that we are 1 billion people. That means 1 billion mind are working, but we know that only 10% or 20% of people are more productive than others. So to utilize that on a single platform, that's what Riddhi is doing. I mean, though there are a lot of task forces in India and around the world, but Riddhi is doing good job in, converting those task forces into a good team, and that the team is working towards those solutions. So I think when we hosted Riddhi a couple of weeks back, we were discussing about some solutions, and now she's saying that they have around 150 solutions for different industries and experts during this COVID thing. And India is always an invention country. I mean, it's just that we are not sure how to market to the global world because we are 1.3 billion, so we can consume ourselves on our own. That's what our prime minister said yesterday. That we have to promote the local product with our vocal voice on a global platform. Because we are 1.3, if we start shouting about some product, I think it can reach out to the world. So that's what we are trying to do. And more probably, I mean, if you see the case studies, South Korea is doing good because they know that they can sanitize the whole country and they can test the individuals basically whenever they have those resources available. That's what they are doing. The same thing happened in Hong Kong. I'm not sure about Malaysia what happened, but the conclusion is that with limited resources you can do a lot of things, but with unlimited resources you take things for granted. That happened in Europe, that happened in South America, that happened in US as well, because you think that you have good amount of the dollar note, and that is not solving a problem right now. The problem is solved by a human, and that's what we need to do right now. It's not about the dollar note can bring you a mask or things like that, but you have to look for solutions and look for preventions as well. Because if we don't prevent right now, if we stop preventing things, I think we have limited people where we can vaccinate them or try to help them in terms of different solutions, and that is what we are doing. And in talk about and also I don't have a fact, but I'll tell you, apart from doctors in India, there are I think 25% of the doctors working around the world who are Indian, and they're in different countries, and they are talking about different researches and solutions. And I think in Bangladesh as well, there are a lot of people who are working outside Bangladesh for the same solution, because we are a very close knitted country. I mean, if we go 100 200 years back, Bangladesh, India, and all the Asian, most of them are a single country. So we know
Yes,
how
India,
to
Pakistan, Bangladesh.
basically. And there's also a word called jugad. It's a Hindi word, but that means be positive and try to solve a problem. So if I am in US and if I am having a problem, you people will say that because of the issue or because of the process we can't get the thing done. But in India, after the big no, we still try to see what we can do and how we can cover up that work as well. So that is known as jugad, and that is also a part of MIT MBA class right now. It's more
Very
about
true.
politics,
Yeah.
good state, and well connection. And also, right now, we are not talking about caste system and all those things. We are talking about one world and one India, and that is what we need to do. We need to spread love, and we need to share the best practices around so that we can fight with pandemic. And I think half of the fight is almost over. We just have to continue doing the same thing. That's why our PM yesterday announced lockdown 4.0, that we have to continue following the same thing for next couple of months so that we can get rid of coronavirus, because vaccine will take around 6 to 8 months more, maybe more than that. But before that, if we start prevention, if we start acting the right manner, and if we start, because as Rishi said, we have people from urban to rural to middle class, and there are a lot of classes in India, and people living at the top of the table and at the bottom of the table. So to create a awareness for everyone in different languages, that's a task. So that is what we are trying to get it done in India. But I think we are in good hands. But we just have to be united and be able to share a lot of right practices around and spread love and spread unity. That is what required right now.
Oh
That
yeah,
was so beautiful, Ankit. I'm just going to add to that one final thing before I hop off.
Yeah.
I think what he mentioned also is, given the invention attitudes in India,
Yeah.
which are fairly ingrained in the culture as well. I think we look for loopholes everywhere as a cultural aspect.
Yeah.
What we're seeing also is a lot of low cost inventions. Again, the silver lining potentially of being a country without resources or with a very low per capita income is also that we have to be wary of being a country which doesn't have insurance coverage, right?
Yeah.
And this is a health tech crisis. So 2000 might have been a technology crisis, 10 years later was a financial crisis. This is a health crisis. And given that, you would have thought that having insurance coverage would be extremely important, but we're in a country which doesn't have that, which also means any solution has to be extremely low cost. And what we're seeing as inventions is extremely low cost solutions, which solve for the root of the problem from a very design thinking, needs finding, what's the core of this point of view. These solutions are not over engineered at all. If anything, they're I just saw right before this call a solution which is a hand crank defibrillator, and one is needed per ICU bed. And this is a hand crank one, right? So it
Wow.
operates without electricity. Now, again, India is also a country with extreme electricity shortages. So the point is, we have extreme problems over here. We have a fluctuating power grid. We have no electricity. We have a very, very low per capita income. We have last mile issues. We have extreme poverty. But I think because of that, we're seeing that much more invention in solutions. And if anything, those should not just can, those should be exported to the world, because whatever is working over here, these costs are so tiny and negligible for other countries, primarily with a higher monetary currency value.
Nita, before you leave off, and I know you said you had to leave off and everything, but I did have two very quick questions. I agree that we need to be more global and everything of that nature. That's actually, what we did in terms. I mean, the governor did bring us into phase one, but even here locally, our city council and our county commissioner, and actually, I would consider both of them friends of mine, have said that, hold on a second, you might want to do that. We're still going to stick to some of the stricter criteria because we're seeing some evidence of things that we're not too pleased with in the Durham area, because Durham is third in terms of our cities behind Charlotte. I forget what the second city is. It might be Wake where Kim is. I can't remember whether it is or not, but I know the third. Our city council was just saying that we might need to hold the brakes for a second. So he's not quite ready to fully go into the state order. So I was glad to see that. And like I said, he's a family friend. But before you got off, the question I had for you was, you said you're an entrepreneur. And by the way, you're a great speaker, and I already had Kim on the show. So I'm inviting you onto my podcast. I do a podcast every Monday night. I had Kim on there 2 nights ago. And I don't mind that you're in India, because I can do special arrangements. I had Renita Roy, who's a photographer from India, and we just arranged the time frame. Because like I said, 7 to 9 p.m. I know it's very early for y'all because of the time difference, but I can do it at like even this time through StreamYard or through Zoom or through one of our other platforms. But I was just curious, and then Arid special. But I was just curious as to what your entrepreneurial business was, and I was inviting you to my podcast.
Thank you so much. Very heartwarming. I would love to come. And if I heard the question correctly, you're wondering about my entrepreneurial history. Is that
Yes.
correct? Got
Yes.
it. Okay. Yeah, thank you for asking. So I started programming when I was 10 years old. I went to Stanford University in California when I was 16. I have 2 degrees from Stanford, both in computer science. But given the nature of how amazing the US education system is, it took a girl with barely any self-esteem and filled her with boatloads of it. And, I took every class under the sun. So as a kid in a candy store, of course, I think I would owe a lot of credit to Stanford, actually, because in addition to my Indian genes, it was that upbringing for my formative years from age of 16 to 23, which really made me be able to do what I can today. So Stanford in general produces entrepreneurs. I've seen that through and through again. I was very lucky to not just be, part of companies like Facebook as a software engineer. I was on the Microsoft HoloLens augmented reality team as a product manager. But then I was also part of a $700 million VC fund in the Valley when I was 21 years old. So I got a bunch of really amazing experiences, all thanks to my time in the US. I don't believe I would have gotten experiences at that young an age, which were that significant if I was over here. Because slight interesting fact, I don't think they give me, if I wasn't an entrepreneur in India, from a job perspective, they don't trust me enough to do at 29 what I did at 21 already in California. So I'm like, okay, I did this thing 8 years ago. But so I I think in India, I need to be an entrepreneur to be able to do interesting work. The good thing is there's so many problems, which means to a person like me, there's so many opportunities to be able to solve things. Within India, I have a disaster management experience as well from 6 years ago when some Kashmir floods had hit. After that, I ran a consumer lending fintech company, which was VC funded. So that grew from 0 to 120 people in 2 years. It won a bunch of awards, Touchwood, for its time, like the Lendit International Innovator of the Year finalist, FinTech of the Year in India, and so on and so forth. We also were able to get Forbes 30 under 30 for Asia for the year 2017. And then after that, as startups have to go through it, there was a liquidity crisis and our company shut down overnight. Because of that, I became a consultant to other founders because ultimately, once a founder, always a founder. And the founder empathy is so high that I just want other people's companies to survive and thrive. And if I can help in a tiny way, that feels nice that I did something for another founder. And ultimately, for COVID India Task Force, this started exactly 2 months ago. So today is our 2 month anniversary, actually. And thank you so much for having me here. And what I will say is, I'm so proud of every single volunteer because we currently have 1,000 volunteers pan India. 120 of them work 12 hours a day or more. 60 of them work 16 hours a day without payment. And we've accomplished more in 2 months than I did in my paid company, in a year and a half. So that just goes to show what this crisis is bringing out in people. It's bringing out the best of humanity as well. Within 2 months, we've been able to set up 15 different sub teams, everything from pan India PPE demand supply matching to fundraising for it. Our current target actually is 2 crores to supply to some very large demands from the governments. Then we have a government relations team engaging with 7 different governments. We have a technology team of 50 people, which is already building technology for governments, 5 different governments, and 3 different medical community projects. One of which is convalescent plasma, which is the largest trial happening in the world. That's the Mumbai trial. Then finally, we have teams like Demo Day Organization and Demo Day Portfolio Management or Cohort Support, which support with connections 100 plus portfolio companies. Then we finally, of course, have social media, recruiting, and at least 5 other teams, which I'm forgetting right now. So we're running like a company, there are MISs, it's metrics oriented. But with everything said, it's unbelievable how much has happened in exactly 2 months, even though the churn is 20x higher because volunteers are in their homes. We don't know each other. We have no working history together. We're sitting across India. We have different times that we come in and go, and volunteer churn is just in general far greater than normal paid employee churn. But the benefit again of that is we every single time use volunteer churn as a reason to set the system as stronger and be stronger than the people, which means the system is such that people can come and go even every day, but the system continues to move with the same frequency. So that has been a learning experience for us as well. We make a lot of mistakes, but overall, it's been a great experience.
That's right. We all make those kind of mistakes on a general basis and everything. So there's no doubt about that. And like I said, if you or Pancake drop your contact information in the chat or share with me, I would gladly reach out to you and have you on the show. Kim did a great job.
Well, and I want to thank Riddhi for always joining us and sharing such great inspirational news. I also want to add, you could not have picked a better place to have gone to school because the West Coast is so much better funded for tech companies than the East Coast. So, your choices that you made paid off, and that was a very good choice. So congratulations.
Thank you so much, Kimberly. And again, I think it's such a great example of just everyone thinking of themselves as global citizens, right? So while we operate locally, what I've learned from my time in the US has been so formative. You're so right. I think the West Coast was just so instrumental that, I'm glad I got the privilege of being a part of that institution at that young an age.
And Kit, she's pretty. She speaks well.
Brilliant.
She's intelligent. She's a good find. She should be an actress. Where'd you find her anyway? I mean, was she just walking around New Delhi or something? Because I know you know 1.3 billion people, but where'd you get this lovely person?
Facebook is something where we connect people, basically.
Facebook.
Really?
What do you do, Nick? Yeah, sometimes, just. But no.
Oh, wait, I got a question for Kim. Did you really get Larry the Cable Guy? You know, you really got Larry.
Yeah.
Is he really going to be on the show?
I don't know yet.
Okay, but you're in
He's
contact.
gonna like our show, but he responded and said to send him an invite. So that's what I'm doing.
Seriously? Okay, just let me know when he's on. I don't know if they've heard about him overseas, but he's big here. Larry the Cable Guy. He's funny. He's realistic.
He's like the Larry.
The Larry the Cable Guy. I mean, he's totally out of control.
The only, I love Larry, Jeff Foxworthy, all of those guys. But I tell you what, if somebody brought Gabriel, Fluffy. I would just pass out. I would just pass out.
I can bring the Indian version of Gabriel. We have a lot of Indian version of Gabriel, but I can't bring that real Gabriel.
I'm going to hop off.
Are you going to leave us, Riddhi? You're going to be back, right?
Unfortunately, yes.
But you're coming back, right?
Every single time you invite me. Every single time.
Yeah, because we need to have a star on the show. We should put you on the celebrity. Then you just do the same rap, but just tell the Americans this: you're an actress.